Om. ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां रामो राजमणिः सदा विजयते रामं रमेशं भजे रामेणाभिहता निशाचरचमु रामाय तस्मै नमः रामान्नास्ति परायणं परतरं रामस्य दासोऽस्म्यहं रामे चित्तलयः सदा भवतु मे भो राम मामुद्धर समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् Hari Om everyone. In the first 5 verses of Drigdrishya Viveka, Vidyaranya Swamiji told us what is the essence that we should take away. Seer of the thoughts is Sakshi, which is pure consciousness. And that is the essence of this entire text. If we have, held on to that, then the main purpose of this text is served. Now, Vidyaranya Swamiji is addressing few other questions, and the advantage of thinking about all these questions is lot of other concepts will get clearer. Having understood the main essence, we should clarify all the other things and strengthen the main understanding. That is the whole purpose. Purpose of discussing ahankara is not for the sake of ahankara. Purpose of discussing ahankara is to know that it is an appearance in Sakshi. That is the main reason. So now we will look at one technical concept which is very helpful. It keeps coming for us, sincere student of Advaita Vedanta. You would have seen this in many of the texts that are being taught, Prakarana Granthas. So what are the two things that we have seen so far? One is ahankara, another is the mind, right? Vidyaranya Swamiji said, this reflected consciousness reflects in buddhi. Chichchaya veshato buddhau bhanam dhistu dvidhastita. And that reflected consciousness and the medium together appears in two ways. One is called ahankruti or ahankara. Another is called antakarana. Means mind and all other things are included in antakarana, in Drigdrishya Viveka. Now there is a concept called as vritti vyapti and phala vyapti. So if you look at this analogy, it becomes very easy to understand what is vritti vyapti and what is phala vyapti. Basically, the way we know objects in this world is not, sometimes fully looked at. How we are understanding objects in this world. So, vritti vyapti tells us that any object, for it to become known, has to become a thought first. Means that object has to take the form of a thought. Only after that, that object is known to us. So here, for example, you have a car. Eyes are seeing the car, no doubt, but there has to be a thought presided over by consciousness, which has to go and envelope and all is, very compromised words, but for the sake of understanding, think of it in this way. Thought has to go and take the form of that object, then only that object is known. That aspect is called as vritti vyapti. Okay, just the object becoming a thought. No thought means it's as though that object is not seen or not experienced at all. Now, having had that kind of a modification of a thought, object has become a thought, there is somebody in us who claims that I know that object. That claimer is ahankara. No matter what object it could be tangible object or it could be some other, some kind of experience or anything. There is somebody who owns up that experience. That aspect of owning up experience is called as phala vyapti. Okay, one is called vritti vyapti, another is called phala vyapti. This is nothing complicated. It's just a systematic way of explaining what we are already experiencing. Okay, but he's not. This concept is not creating anything new. But the most important point here is when we know the objects of the world outside, we always know it as different from ourselves. Means what is the statement we make when we know the car? We say, I know the car. Means I am different, I am the knower of something else called as car. In Sanskrit, if you want to call it, knower is called as pramata and known is called as prameya. Okay, pramata says, I am knowing prameya. I know the car. Now the question becomes, when we say, I know Brahman, will I know Brahman in the same way? Now you apply the same, analogy. Now Brahman, what we are, saying as Brahman is nothing but Sakshi. Same Sakshi is Brahman. Now Sakshi is not different from me, right? The same ahankara has to understand that its nature, true nature is Sakshi. So for that, it needs only a clear thought. Here the thought is about an object outside, but when we hear Mahavakya, it is called as Brahmakara Vritti. And that Brahmakara Vritti has Sakshi as its object, but not object in its physical form. Object as in letting go of everything which is not of the nature of consciousness. So only thought is sufficient to know our nature as consciousness. We don't have to add another claim and say that I know consciousness or I know Sakshi. I am Sakshi, I'm not knower of Sakshi. There is a difference. If I say I know Sakshi, it means I know it as some object. But when I say I am Sakshi, it is with this understanding that ahankara is an appearance in Sakshi. Okay, so this concept helps us understand that aspect. When it comes to knowing nature of things in the world, objects and everything, we need vritti vyapti, we need a thought, and we need phala vyapti, ahankara which claims that I know that thing. But when it comes to Sakshi, we need only vritti vyapti, means a clear thought of what is my true nature. Okay, we don't have to have another claim saying that I know, Brahman. This becomes more important because sometimes we have this understanding that we have to experience Sakshi. Whenever there is experience involved, there has to be phala vyapti and vritti vyapti. Like in experience of objects in the world and everything, both are needed. Means ahankara says I am the knower of that. Phalavyapti means directly you can associate with ahankara, for simplicity. But for knowing our true nature, it is known as the substratum, not as another object different from ourselves. Okay, this point we should note. Now, this is the culmination of the thought process which started from shloka number 6, right? Which said, how is this consciousness getting reflected? Why are some things looking as sentient, whereas other things are insentient? Answer to that question is given from shloka number 6 to shloka number 12. This is the Upasamhara. Upasamhara means conclusion, summary of this entire section. Manohang Krutyupadanam Manohang Krutyupadanam Lingamekam Jadatmakam Lingamekam Jadatmakam Avasthatrayamanveti Avasthatrayamanveti Jayate Mriyate Tatha Jayate Mriyate Tatha Manohang Krutyupadanam Lingamekam Jadatmakam Avasthatrayamanveti Jayate Mriyate Tatha. Here Vidyaranya Swamiji is saying, he is precisely pointing out what is it that is going through different experiences. Mano ahankruti upadanam lingamekam jadatmakam. Means this upadanam, the medium of mana and ahankruti. Now he has not forgotten. There are two aspects he had said, right? Buddha, what he had said earlier in shloka number 6, that same buddhi had two parts. One is called as ahankruti, another is called as antakarna. So the same he is bringing here. Antakarna, he is using the word manaha. Manaha ahankruti upadanam lingam ekam jadatmakam. This sukshma sharira is called as linga, subtle body, what we call, right? It indicates the existence, or it reflects consciousness, or lingam, what is the English word? Indicates is, I think, the closest. It indicates consciousness, that is why it is called as linga. If there is a smoke, it indicates fire. So that smoke is called linga, indicator of something. Jadatmakam, it is inert by itself. This inert medium, along with reflected consciousness, is the one that goes through different stages of experiences. Avasthatrayam anveti jayate mriyate tatha. Now we'll see a little bit more about this. It's a beautiful verse. Now this is Sakshi, right? This is the main point of this verse is to point out that Sakshi is not the one, the witness of thoughts, what we had determined in shloka number 1 to 5. That Sakshi is not the one who is going through three states of experiences. We say Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti, right? And then we say Turiya. Turiya means pure consciousness. So it is not first state, second state, third state, and then pure consciousness is the fourth state. Sakshi or Turiya is that which is the substratum of all three states, which is unaffected by experiences. What goes through experiences is buddhi. Okay, what is called here as linga sharira, right? Mano ahankriti upadanam lingam ekam jadatmakam. The semicircle on the left is ahankruti, and one on the right is called as antakarna or manaha. This together, along with reflected consciousness, goes through different experiences of waking, dream, and deep sleep. W is waking, D is dream, DS is deep sleep. Now, several cycles, of our days and nights and lives after lives is a story of this, ahankara. When we say Tripurasura, right? Tripurasura means he has 3 places of staying. Either it is waking state, or dream state, or deep sleep state. The one who is able to understand the substratum, that is the one who is, the slayer of Tripurasura. That is pure consciousness, Sakshi. Just look at a balcony, if you want to look at it in a simpler way, or rooms you call in a small house. Outside living room, inside kitchen, and then you have another, bedroom or something. It is the same person who is appearing in all these 3 things. Okay. So here also, that pure consciousness which gets reflected in Linga Sharira, Buddhi, that Buddhi goes through these 3 states. If we want to interact with pure consciousness or know where it is, the only place that we can access it is in one of those 3 states. That also we should know. We will never have pure consciousness devoid of its conditioning. We will never be able to experience pure consciousness devoid of its conditioning. All that we can do is understand what is real and what is appearance, distinguish between them clearly, and own up what we are. Okay, that is how this point should be understood for avasthatraya, different states of experiences. Another point which we should note here is the 3 states of experiences are gained because of karma. Karma decides how long we will be in waking, how long we will be in dream, and how long we will be in deep sleep. In Kaivalya Upanishad, it comes, right? Because of karma phala, this jiva is woken up from deep sleep. Means for how long we should be in each avastha is determined by karmas. And this itself is the nature of bondage. If a sadhaka starts thinking, right, that because of karma phala, I am helplessly being made to experience different stages of experiences. One in this body, it could be in some other body also, but everything is a result of karma phala. Then the question becomes, is there something which is untouched by karma phala? That is the nature of sakshi, which is our own true nature, having understood that everything else is known as an appearance. That is where we have to shift our attention towards. And vyavaharik way of dealing with karma phala is to make ahankara stronger, buddhi stronger, that is at the level of transaction. Karma phalas will come, but this ahankara and personality is very strong to face karma phala. But the absolute way of coming out of this cycle of karma phala is through knowledge, is to understand that we were always ever unaffected, ever different from this ahankara. If ahankara is negated, karta is negated, karma phalas don't come to that person. In this life, whatever has to come, that will come. But there is no further rebirth. There is no cycle of birth and death here onwards. That is the main result of Advaita Vedanta, that there is no samsaranam, no punarjanma. But to understand the beauty of that result, understand the glory of that result, we should clearly think what is the nature of bondage. Looking at karma phala itself as bondage will give lot of depth to our understanding of bondage. This point also becomes clear, I think, after a long time, that karma phala is a bondage actually. It is not something that a sincere seeker should seek. Okay, so If that is understood, then moksha intensity, mumukshutvam, should increase. This desire to abide in true nature of happiness, that should increase. But now, Vidyananda Swamiji, what he has said now, avastha trayam anveti, jayate mriyate tatha. That tatha word is beautiful. What it means is, just like we go through, just like waking, dream, and deep sleep happen, in the same way, birth and death also happen. It is just because of the cycle of karma that we are getting a new body after this body has been given up. Only difference is when we wake up, right? So, what is the analogy here? In waking, we experience the world. Dream, we have some other experiences, and then all experiences merge back into its seed form. On the other hand, when the person is alive, all waking experiences happen. And when the body is given up, it has just gone into seed form. But over here, there is some assurance. Waking, dream, deep sleep, what happens is we are assured that when I wake up, I will wake up in the same body. But here, it is said that person wakes up in some other body. So Jiva finds appropriate Sharira to express itself after one lifespan. This thinking, if somebody has done, what should be the understanding? If we have taken care of karmas, if that person has lived a good life, there is no need to worry about death. It should be looked at from the standpoint of maturity, because Vedanta discusses these topics more to give us strength. That these are realities of life, but we should know what is the right perspective for each one of them. In Bhagavad Gita also, Bhagavan says that as we change clothes, in the same way we change different bodies. There is nothing to be, grieving too much about. Little bit of grief is okay, but not too much of grief. This is the another aspect what Vidyananda Swamiji is pointing here. Jayate mriyate tatha. Just as we go through the experiences of waking, dream, and deep sleep, in the same way, when we take our life after life, all those lives into consideration, it is the same way as waking and waking, dream, and deep sleep. Birth and death are exactly in the same way. Person who has thought about it, first of all, will derive or should derive a lot of inner strength for ourselves, right? And later on, it is if you have to understand some in perspective, then that also should be looked at. But remember, the purpose of Vedanta is not to say that we need to have life after life. Vedanta says, understand nature as Sakshi, think clearly how I am Sakshi, how I am unaffected by any of my conditionings, and own up this knowledge through meditation. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasanam, once that is done, there is no need to worry about any further lives. That is Vedanta's solution. But we should understand other things also from that perspective. There is one interesting point here just regarding this spiral that you are seeing there. Now we are zooming into that spiral. One more interesting thing we'll see. Bhagwan is very compassionate. He says, now we have taken a chunk from that sanchita karma, right, which we call as prarabdha, that is essential or responsible for our experiences that we have in this life, the body that we have and everything, that is called as prarabdha karma. But fortunately, all of that prarabdha doesn't come to us together. So it comes in chunks, it comes in packages. Means first, day by day, there is, package of prarabdha which is as though sent out. So day one prarabdha comes, finishes its quota for waking state, dream state, and remaining where prarabdha cannot enter, that is called as deep sleep. That is why we are at bliss. Fortunately, no matter how much things are going on outside in waking and dream, there is always a reminder every day that we have a blissful aspect of our personality which we experience in deep sleep. And that is mainly because there is no prarabdha or ahankara which is active. So like this, day 2 happens, day 3 happens, and so on. So it is not that entire prarabdha fortunately has not come to us all on the same day. Problems also come, but it's always mixed with joys also. Means good thing and bad thing are mixed in our experiences. Nobody can say all my experiences are only good, good, and good. Nor can somebody say other side. Because human birth itself is obtained when these karmas are at almost equal level. When punya karmas are ready to fructify, that is when human body is gained. So we'll always have this mix. So we should know, that if sometime it is going down, it is just one side of things. It will also go up. But when it goes up, it is not to be too happy about. That is the stage when we should strengthen ourselves. That is the stage when we should know the deeper meanings of scriptures and have that strength to face other times. So this was answer to question number 2. This topic is over now. Okay, when I think about myself, I don't feel I am changeless. I think I'm going through experiences of waking, dream, etc. How should I account for this feeling? And who goes through these experiences? So it is said, just as there is mind, there is another aspect of that antakarana or buddhi, which is called as ahankara. Ahankara is the one that goes through experiences, and it will always keep going through experiences. What is unaffected by experience is sakshi. That is what we should know as our true nature. Appearance of ahankara will keep continuing. There is nothing we can do about it because it has sahaja tadatmya, right? With sakshi. No, I didn't say that correct. It has bhrantijanya tadatmya with sakshi. Ahankara and sakshi have erroneous identification. All that we can do is understand that this is an appearance in consciousness. Ahankara with body has karmaja tadatmya, what we saw right now, prarabdha karma. It fits in this previous slide also, that as long as karmas are there, ahankara and body will always be together. For this life, whatever prarabdha karma has come, it will play out. We should know how to deal with it at the level of sadhana and ahankara also. But most importantly, go to the source which is free from any kind of prarabdha karma, any kind of karma phala. That is pure consciousness. And this reflection also will keep happening, just as whenever medium is available, sun will get reflected in a pot of water. Whenever linga sharira or buddhi is available, inner equipment is available, reflection of consciousness will happen. Okay, so I hope that point is clear. What was the first question? I hope you remember the questions. Why only some things appear as sentient while others are insentient? Is consciousness all pervading or fragmented? What was the answer? Consciousness is all pervading, but in those mediums where it gets reflected, those mediums appear sentient. You remember that painting that we saw? In that painting itself, there are some things which are sentient. People are walking, and some things which are inert. But everything is drawn on the same canvas. So here also in this pure consciousness, there is superimposition of things which are appearing sentient and things which are inert, but it's only because of the medium, nothing to do with pure consciousness, which is our nature. Now student asks one more question, which was the question number 3. We'll just see the question. We won't look at answer today. Student says, you made a division between Sakshi, Drug, and Drushya, right? The world. You said Rupam Drishyam, Lochanam Druk. Like that, you had different seers seen pairs. But then finally, you said Sakshi is the ultimate seer. Everything else falls under Drushya. Mind is Drushya, Ahankara is Drushya, eyes, sense organs are Drushya, and world outside is, of course, Drushya. You know, world is Drushya is easy to understand. Eyes are Drushya, mind is Drushya becomes little subtle. But that is how the inquiry is. We should hear clearly first and then think over it. He says if one is Drushya and another is Drashta, right? Drug and Drushya, are they two independent things? Drug Drushya Viveka you did and nicely came up with two things. Is the Drushya independently existing or is it dependent on Drashta, Drug? Means is matter and consciousness, are they two separate things or are they dependent, or is matter dependent on consciousness? That is a question, and here we will look at what is the nature of this world. Okay, so that question Vidyaranya Swamiji is going to take up now. Next set of verses address this question. Okay, so we'll pause here. There are some questions that we will take. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om. So these were the questions from last time. The first one is, would the world outside exist if I don't exist? Actually, this question, it's helpful if we look at that slide again. Which one can we look at? Let's look at this one. I hope you all are able to see the slide. If what is the question? Can the world outside? So we should define what is world here, huh? According to Vidyaranya Swamiji, or it should be according to us also, world starts from here. Antakarana, mind, all of that is part of the world. Everything what is other than consciousness is categorized under world. But let us say, one step before that is to take everything outside as world. So the question is, would the world outside exist if I don't exist? Now here we should ask the question, what is our understanding of I? So if understanding of I is ahankara, ahankara means this, entity, buddhi, perception of the world will not be there if ahankara is not there. But if you have understood our true nature as consciousness, then we can go a step further. Existence of the world is not there if consciousness is not there. Ability to illumine or know the world is not there if consciousness is not there. Means, would the world exist if I don't exist? World derives its existence from me. But remember, careful, what is me here? What is the meaning of I? If you say I is buddhi, then you stop with perception. World doesn't derive existence from ahankara. True or not? Ahankara derives its existence from Sakshi. So I don't have the words written here. Maybe this one is helpful. Okay, so this is Buddhi and this is Sakshi, right? So world outside doesn't derive its existence from Buddhi. Perception of the world is through Buddhi. That is true. Means if Buddhi is not there, world is not perceived. But when we say I, does the understanding of I land on Buddhi or does it land on Sakshi? This is the whole sadhana, this is the whole clarity of knowledge, right? More we have done mananam, more we have done nididhyasanam. When we say I will directly point to Sakshi. Now, Sakshi is the substratum of this creation. That is our Vedanta matam. Right? Entire creation, whatever is known only because of consciousness. It exists only because of consciousness. Another way to look at this is any existence, right? Any object, the way to know it is only when there is somebody to know it. Means if you have something going on in, let us say, remote forest, Machu Picchu, something is going on there. There is, some leaf that is falling down. Now, how do you know whether, that thing exists or not? I am here and the thing is falling there. How does, existence of that thing depend on me? So remember, when we say me, what we are saying there is, there has to be an intellect, a buddhi that can know that particular object. Only then that object can be established. It might be a remotest planet also. Only when it becomes known, then that thing is, established. I'm using the word established. It is a nyaya term. How to do siddhi of any vastu. How to establish existence of any object. That first step is there should be pramata. Only when a sentient entity knows that thing, then only we can say this object exists. But this sentient entity, buddhi, what we call, it is not independently existing. It is deriving its existence from Sakshi. That is why we say world is dependent on me. So we should understand what is that me. Okay, it is not only buddhi, but Sakshi. Same Sakshi is illumining. It might be a small ant that is going in Amazon basin or that Machu Picchu forest, which is experiencing that leaf. That Sakshi is not different from the Sakshi which is illumining my thoughts. So if my identification or understanding is with Sakshi, then I won't have doubts when I make that statement. If I am not there, world is not there. I refers to Sakshi. Okay. This is an interesting question. It says, triggers that bring anger seems almost always coming from interaction with people, especially with people close to you. Does that mean we have to avoid people and live a solitary life? This, I think, is in connection with with the point we discussed about samskaras, right? What we had said there was, if we have to avoid certain samskaras manifesting within us, we have to avoid those environments. Now, this we should know where to apply and where we cannot apply. Most importantly, there was a statement, that I had read somewhere. Situations bring out weaknesses which are there already within us. Means, different situations that we end up in, they will always bring out things which is already there within us, like anger or whatever emotions, which is our weakness, that emotion will be brought up. But we should know that spirituality also brings out strength which is there within us only. Right? So if we are not able to change the environment many a times, we should know how to change our response, because that will become the trigger for bringing up more of those tendencies. Some conversations, we also know it happens even in discussions on topics. That is why different types of debates are given. There is Vada, Jalpa, Vitanda. Means you go with one idea of discussing, but in that discussion, something else only comes up, and the whole purpose of that discussion is lost. So, what is said there is we should know when to step back. We might not be able to change the situation, or that is not what is always recommended. Those things which we can keep away, that we should, right? Where we know, let us say there is some place, if I go, I will fall for that food item. I'm just giving food as an example because it's understood by everyone, but we should apply what are those weaknesses that we have. Every weakness we don't, and everybody will have their own, right? So we have to think for ourselves. Those things which we can keep away, that we should keep away. Those things which we cannot keep away, there we should know that this input, we should be very, very alert, right? Our response which is coming because of that input should not lead to more of that vasana getting invoked. If it is anger, then it is said don't respond when you are angry, right? At least for that time when the mind is angry, that is with us, right? We don't have to depend on other people for us to do that. After that, when mind calms down, that time the response can be different. So that way we will have to know how to deal with our samskaras, right? Not looking down upon ourselves, even if that emotion comes up, but making sure we are putting forth effort to come out of them. Okay. Is sadhana the best way to watch for undesirable vasanas? When we use the word sadhana, it's a very broad word. And every sadhana has a very specific purpose, what it's addressing. For example, if somebody has, weakness of thinking that, I cannot survive without eating food, or too much emphasis is on food, for that person, fasting sadhana is helpful. For that time that I spend on food, that time I can use for something else now. If it's a spiritual sadhaka, that sadhaka will say, I will use that time to do some more of Bhagwan's, nama, japa or something. So every sadhana has some kind of result that is attached to it. So for purity of mind, best sadhana is devotion to Bhagwan. One of the cantos of Bhagavatam is called as Ishanu Katha. And it is said, the main result of listening to Katha of Bhagwan is mind becomes purified. Pressure of vasanas go down. So we should know which sadhana, links to which particular result. Okay, I'm seeing if I can combine these questions. No, they're different topics. If the individual mind has inner impressions, does the total mind also have impressions? This topic has been addressed in different ways, but let's see if we can take one of the ways. One of the explanation for this point is, just as individual mind has impressions, inner vasanas what we call, total mind also has impressions. That is called as samashti vasana, samashti samskara. But we should remember, vasanas are unmanifest. They are not having a physical form. So actually speaking, we cannot physically distinguish between individual and total. Right? Whatever is unmanifest, what will be the boundary to say that this part is individual, this part is total? So that boundary is not there. But for the sake of understanding, we understand that individual experiences, individual vasanas, individual mind experiences these vasanas. And then there is samashti also. But we should be careful. Samashti vasana abhimani, samashti samskara, upahita chaitanya is Bhagwan. Bhagwan doesn't experience results of actions just like we do. Because the medium in which it is appearing, the total mind, is a very superior quality. Means it has lot of sattva guna. That is why it is not affected by these, vasanas or karma phala. He is the one who is presiding over those vasanas. That much, we can understand from this. Okay, we'll pause here. There are a few other questions also, which I will note down. Or did I say ahankara and buddhi are the same? So in Drigdrishya Viveka, buddhi is inner equipment, total inner equipment, which has two parts. One is ahankara, another is antakarana. So secondarily, you can use one word also. Generally, like in Amruta Bindu Upanishad, right? We say, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. So mana there doesn't mean only mind. Ahankara is not the cause of bondage. So these terms are used interchangeably. That one slide that we saw, right, with division of antakarana into 4 parts and how Drugdrishya Viveka does it. That is the most important one. You won't get confused with terms, right, if we are thorough in that concept. Okay, I think that is good. Other questions we can take next time. Hari Om, everyone.